Welcome to the Story Selling Podcast, the show that explores the art and science of authentic marketing for purpose-led entrepreneurs. With me, your host and founder of the Story Selling Lab, Rob Drummond. This episode of the Story Selling Podcast is sponsored by my agency, the Story Selling Lab, where I help purpose-led entrepreneurs to generate a consistent flow of great clients using LinkedIn ads without funding the big tech Christmas party. To learn more, head to storyselling.biz. On with the show. At the start of 2023, LinkedIn introduced what is now called the conversation ad format, which is LinkedIn's sponsored messaging ad format for sending direct messages to your ideal prospects. Conversation ads replaced an older ad format called messaging ads. And I tried messaging ads in the past and never really made them work. In theory, they should have worked really well, and they just didn't generate the same level of response as the newsfeed ads. Mostly over the last 5 years, we've really been running, in the main, single image ads in the newsfeed on LinkedIn. That has typically been the best performing ad format. So at the start of 2023, LinkedIn introduced conversation ads. I roll my eyes a bit because every time the ad networks introduce a new ad format, there's often a big fanfare about it. And as a reasonably experienced ads manager, I roll my eyes. But, I gave it a test. I had a client at the time that was generating leads for about £150 per lead using newsfeed ads, which was an okay result for the client because those leads were quite valuable to them. And I threw up a conversation ads campaign. I just created one ad to the same audience as the single image ad campaign. And I came in the next morning, logged into LinkedIn ads, and we'd had a bunch of leads through for £35 per lead. That got my attention. And since then, I've been retesting this over a variety of clients. And I would say at the moment that in 75% of the cases, I've seen conversation ads outperform single image ads. Not all of the time. I've had some client situations where single image campaigns, so running newsfeed ads, has still worked better. I've been trying to pick apart what is it about those projects where the newsfeed ads has worked better. Because the difference to the newsfeed ad is that you've got the image creative, and images can convey a big idea much more succinctly in a certain amount of space. So if you've got a big idea that you need to get across, then sometimes newsfeed ads can do better. But on the whole, I would say in 75% of the cases recently, I've seen lower cost per leads on the conversation ad format. My best performing client at the moment is consistently generating leads for about £5 per name. And to be clear, they're not sales ready leads. What we're doing is we're expanding the client's pool of email addresses. We're expanding the potential pool of future leads. So there's still a requirement to email those leads, nurture those leads, build a relationship with those leads. But the cost per name has been exceptionally good. This series of podcast episodes is all about examining different ways of writing a conversation ad. And today's episode is about the results-led template. So far in this episode, I've given you two examples. I've given you the example of my clients that went from £150 per lead down to £35 per lead. And we've got my other client that is adding names to their database for £5-ish per name on a consistent, ongoing basis. I've worked in marketing for quite a long time, and I've written ads for just about every type of client you can imagine in just about every industry you might imagine, and then some that you probably wouldn't have thought of. And on the whole, I've always avoided leading by talking about results because it feels a bit like the easy option. It feels a bit cliched. If I was writing to an American audience where American advertising tends to be more upfront, more in your face potentially, then my feeling is that it tends to work better. But having done some more testing with this recently, I think that the results-led template is a valid approach, including for more reserved UK or European-based audiences, where if you're not in the UK, let me just paint you the picture that we do not like to be sold to. If you were to send me a message that's especially the ones to do with marketing and business growth, like it's quite a good way to rub people in the UK up the wrong way. But I've done some testing with this recently to UK audiences, and the results-led template has generated a good cost per lead, or certainly similar to some of the other templates that I'm talking about in this series. There's a few specifics that you need to be aware of, though, and that's what we're going to cover in this episode. So as always, we're going to cover 3 ideas. The first idea is specificity. The second idea is the mechanism. And the third idea is curiosity. So let's jump in and have a look at the first idea. I seem to be talking about specificity a lot in this series. And it's certainly true that in writing any piece of copy, and especially writing an ad, because if you're writing a conversation ad, every word matters. You've got a slice of someone's attention and you've got to really make the most of it. So you need to be very specific about what you're saying, very deliberate, very specific. If you're writing emails to people and you maybe aren't as specific as you could be, then email is a little bit more forgiving. But with a sponsored message, you have to get someone's attention, and being very specific about the result you provide is really a prerequisite. If you were to send someone a message and it almost fall into a cliche of like how to 10x your business, like I don't think there's any way to drive away people faster than saying, here's my unique way. Here's my simple 5 steps to 10x your business in 30 days. Like, it's so cliched. If you're going to lead with results, the results need to be real and they need to be specific. So if you think about the examples I gave you earlier, my client went from generating leads for £150 per lead down to £35 a lead. Those are real numbers. And it's the specificity of it that makes you go, oh, how did they do that? Which relates to curiosity, which we'll come on to. But if you're going to adopt this approach, it's almost like drawing on 1 or 2 signature success stories. This is what Perry Marshall talks about. In your marketing, you need to have certain signature success stories that you draw on. And what you're doing in this case, in creating a LinkedIn conversation ads that leverages the results-led approach, is you're retelling your signature success stories, but you're being very specific about the numbers and about the results. What specific results did you provide for that client? You don't have to call the client out. You don't have to say who they were or what industry they're in or anything that identifies them. But it needs to be specific, and it needs to be believable. And quoting a very specific result actually makes the result more believable. Like if you said that you ran ads for a month and you generated £100,000 for your clients, that is less believable than saying we ran ads for a month, we ran a product launch, and we generated £127,632.20. The latter is more believable because it's more specific, and it sounds obvious to talk about it now, but it gets overlooked. And actually, a lot of the ads that I see that are using the results-led approach could be sharpened by having a more specific results, by leveraging one of these signature success stories that you've got. So that was the first idea, was specificity. The second idea then, which follows on from showcasing a specific result, is the mechanism. So yes, you capture someone's attention by saying, for this particular client, we delivered this particular result. In the middle part of the ad, you got the mechanism, and the mechanism is shining a light of insight on how you did it. And the light of insight should be something that your reader isn't aware of, or wasn't expecting, or didn't know about. So in my ads, I lead by saying, I'm writing because I have been running ads for some of my clients, and we've cut their cost per lead from £153 down to £36 by using conversation ads. And it's the using conversation ads, or using conversation ads in a certain way, that is the mechanism. That's my mechanism for doing what I do. In thinking about your mechanism, you need to think about, well, what is different about your approach to other providers or other service providers? Because pinpointing that unique mechanism is what's going to make your ad stand out. It kind of explains the result that you've already stated. So you've opened up the message and you've stated a particular result that you've been able to provide, and then the mechanism is stating how you did it. In talking about the mechanism, you don't have to go into every detail, and in fact, you shouldn't go into every detail, but you should allude to something. So the reason that my mechanism works is because not many people currently are aware of LinkedIn conversation ads, or often they actually think it's to do with creating manual direct conversations, and that actually isn't how it works. But in talking about the mechanism, you're shining the lights of insight on something that they've missed. And that gets them to say, oh, actually, that's interesting. I might be interested in hearing more about this. Which brings us on to the third idea. And the third idea is curiosity. So when you talk about the mechanism, it should make the reader, first of all, believe you, but then also want to hear more. The question after hearing the mechanism is, oh, that's interesting. How does that work? Or can you tell me more about it? I'm currently holding, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you won't be able to see, but I'm holding Tested Advertising Methods by John Caples, which is one of my recommended copywriting books. Caples talked about 3 ways of writing the hook to your ad. He talked about writing about self-interest. He talked about including newsworthy elements, and he talked about invoking curiosity. And actually, by using the results-led template, we're kind of doing all 3 things. The first part of the message, where you're stating the result that you were able to provide as part of your signature success story, that is appealing very directly to someone's self-interest, because you're saying, implicitly, is this a result that you would be interested in achieving too? The mechanism, in the second part of the message, you're talking about the mechanism. And the mechanism can be tied to something that is newsworthy. In a sense, you're asking, what has changed? What has changed that has meant that your mechanism works better than ever now? Is there a story of change in the marketplace that means that your approach works better than the approaches that the client or potential client has used in the past? So for me, conversation ads are a newsworthy element because it's a new ad format. Not many people are using them. The real light of insight is the fact that the lead form conversion rates tend to be much higher on conversation ads than on newsfeed ads. So that's the newsworthy elements. And throughout all of this, we're trying to build curiosity. We're trying to make people thirsty for more, and still ask themselves the question, okay, how did you do that? And can I achieve that too in my own business? I talk at some length about curiosity in my book, Simple Story Selling, because as you might have gathered, this email series about LinkedIn conversation ads isn't actually just about conversation ads, because you can apply these principles to any marketing media, any format. You could write a results-led email. You could write a purpose-led direct mail letter. The media actually doesn't matter that much. So in my book, Simple Story Selling, I have a section about keeping people reading. So if you check out the editing section in Simple Story Selling, I talk about editing tips to keep people reading. So curiosity operates at an overall level of like, okay, this is the result you can provide. How do we do that? What's the mechanism? But it also operates, it's a fractal. curiosity also works down at sentence and word by word level, where as you write your message and as the reader reads each individual word, it updates the image in their mind. You can write the message by starting to create an image of the outcome in one paragraph and ending it in another paragraph. It might be that you open your LinkedIn conversation ad by saying, I'm writing because recently we've been helping our clients to cut their cost per conversion from £150 down to £35. And this message explains how we did it. And then in the second paragraph, you move on to the mechanism. You've implied that you're about to tell them why, but you haven't told them until the next paragraph. So you can kind of bake curiosity into the message by leaving each paragraph on a sort of mini cliffhanger. It's almost like a fine detail, but it can make quite a big difference to your results. Is how do you end each paragraph in the message? Have you completed the thought, or have you left something incomplete until the following paragraph? Have you opened the loop and then not completely closed it? Does the reader have to carry on reading in order to close the loop? That's a really useful thing to ask yourself as you're writing your conversation ads. In summary, then, I think the results-led template is a valid approach. Even in conservative UK markets where we don't like to be sold to, we don't like to hear about other people's results, it is possible to do it as long as you're being specific about the results that you provide and about who you provide them for and what the specifics of the circumstances were. And then you talk about the mechanism of how you did it. And the mechanism shines a light of insight on something that they've missed. And they go, oh, that's interesting. Perhaps we can do this for our business. And that starts to evoke this sense of curiosity. And it's the sense of curiosity that you need to maintain throughout a LinkedIn conversation ad if you want to write a high-performing ad. Curiosity then works, for the message as a whole in terms of them being interested in the mechanism, but you can also bake curiosity into your writing in particular by paying attention to the ends of your paragraphs and leaving people on a thought that you continue or resolve in the next paragraph until you get to the end and you invite them to your call to action, you invite them to subscribe to your list, or you invite them to download your lead magnet. So do pay attention to curiosity as well. If you'd like more insight into curiosity and writing with curiosity baked into your writing, then do go and pick up a copy of my book, Simple Story Selling. On the next episode, we're going to look at another LinkedIn conversation ads template, and we're going to look at a template that has been working really well for some of my clients and really badly for others. And that's a template that I call the confession. If you're an expert of what you do and you're not a big marketer, people regard you as an expert in your field, but you're not visible, creating podcasts, creating weekly or daily emails, the confession format could work really well for you. So I'll explain all about that on the next episode. If you're not subscribed to the Story Selling Podcast, please take a moment to subscribe now at storyselling.biz/podcast. When you opt in, you'll get a copy of my LinkedIn conversation ad template pack and also my lead incubator email sequence blueprint, which is the email sequence I recommend you send to people once they've responded to your LinkedIn ad. And finally, if you'd like help with this, if you're listening along and you realize that you just don't have the time, skills, willing, or expertise to do this for yourself, head to storyselling.biz/LinkedIn-ads. There's options there for working together on either an agency basis or on a kind of training done with you approach. So I'll speak to you next time about the confession template. Thank you as always for listening, and I will speak to you next time. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Story Selling Podcast, you'll want to make sure you're on my email list. Head to storyselling.biz/podcast, where you can opt in to future episode notifications and also download my lead incubator blueprint. You can also find my book, Simple Story Selling, on Amazon in paperback and Kindle formats. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.